Hi, Mark. Welcome to Connect and Grow.
Thank you. I love your name too, because connecting and growing is in my DNA.
That's good to hear. So, can you tell us a little bit about your journey and how you got to where you are today?
Thanks, Igor, for even having me on. My story of an entrepreneurial leader actually started in the nonprofit sector in the hospitality, retreats, camps, and conference centers. And I became the president of a place on the headwaters of the Chesapeake Bay. And when I took that job, I had no idea that the stress and pressure of taking this huge, I called it a cruise liner, to move that thing in any direction was super hard. And the bottom line is the first 4 years in leadership, I had 5 stomach surgeries. And then I was on pain meds. And after about 8 years, the pain doctor said, "You got to get off all these pain meds." And he gave me a suggestion. It was a procedure where they put a cord up your spine, block the pain. Doesn't solve my pain, but it blocks it. And I said, "I'm on." And for 15 minutes after the procedure, it was glorious. I literally could not feel the pain in my stomach, in my back, in all the places that I had been struggling with. But after 15 minutes, it was as if someone was pouring acid into my spine, and I just began to scream. And they raced around and got me in an ambulance and took me to the hospital. And on the way to the hospital, I lost all feeling from my waist to my toes because the doctor accidentally cut a blood vessel in my spine and left me temporarily paralyzed. And so I often look at leadership as a heavy mantle that whoever chooses to step into a leadership role, but we have to pay attention to our body, our soul, our spirit, our mind, and the people we're with, and acknowledge that sometimes we enter detours that we thought was a path, but it was actually a detour that takes us to a better place.
What do you mean? What do you mean by that? You thought it's the path, but it's actually a detour.
Well, imagine spending 30 years in sales, marketing, and leadership in the hospitality industry. I figured I was going to retire doing that. This surgery changed the whole trajectory of my life. And sometimes detours are not detours, they're actually the path. Because after the 18 months of recovery from this surgery gone bad, Inspiring Growth was born. And I started coaching and working with the sales and marketing with organizations. And that actually is giving me the why. Matter of fact, I was working with a leader out in Prescott, Arizona. I had helped him for a couple of years with sales, marketing, leadership development. And he called me one day and he goes, "Fish," he says, "I just want to tell you, you have inspired growth in me as a leader. I mean, we've grown 62%, and I'm thinking of running for the mayor of Prescott, Arizona." And I said, "Well, go back to that first thing you said. Because you see, my company, when it was born, was my family name, which was Payne Fisher Marketing Group. But on that day, Greg called something out in me that he was experiencing from me over multiple years, and he labeled it, he named it as Inspiring Growth, which I instantly resonated with. That's my why. That's why I get up in the morning, so that I can be with leaders who want to grow. I can tell them to avoid certain dumb taxes in leadership, I call them. And so I changed the name of my company, and it's now called Inspiring Growth, where we inspire growth with great leaders and their brands.
And so, is there a specific type of leaders that you like working with and whom you try to inspire growth?
Great question. I would say the leaders that I resonate most with are the ones who are curious. There's a great Apple TV show called Ted Lasso. And for those who have watched Ted Lasso, there's a scene in that, in one of those episodes where Ted, the coach of the soccer team, is playing darts with the previous owner of the soccer team. And it was kind of a playful banter until Ted put a wager down that he would, if Ted won, he would require this old leader to get out of the way of the new owner. Ted kind of played him. He used his left hand, and he kind of didn't do a good job. So the guy was like, "Yep, I'll take your bet." Then Ted puts his hand in the right, the darts in the right hand. He starts going at it, and before you know it, he has annihilated this guy and embarrassed him in front of all the people in the bar. And there's a quote in that scene that I have grasped onto, and it's this. Ted says, "You know, Rupert, if you had paid more attention and you were a bit more curious, I would have told you I played darts all my life with my dad since I was 13 until he passed away at 18. And if you were curious, you would have asked me these questions, but you're not." And he talked about driving by this school that had a sign out on the wall. It was like a big graffiti that said, "Be curious, not judgmental. Be curious, not judgmental." And what I've learned is that the men and women that I've engaged in relationships as a leadership coach, or literally being an embedded VP of sales and marketing for their companies, it's the curious ones, it's the humble ones, it's the ones that want to learn and grow. And those are the ones that I resonate most with.
And how you like to emphasize the power of maybe, right?
Yeah.
How does that play into, what you just told us
That's,
about?
that's a great question, because for several years with my company, leaders would call me and they'd say, "Hey, I've got a problem. It's a big marketing problem. Do you think you could help us? Could you fix it? Could you grow it?" And I used to say, "Absolutely. You got it. We'll do it." But I recognize that rooted in that answer was actually a bit of arrogance, a bit of pride. There's an ancient proverb that says, "Pride comes before the fall." And I've experienced those falls where I thought I could do more than I actually could. And so I changed my language over the last 5 years. So when people ask me, could I help them? I say, maybe. Maybe we can do this together. Let's take a look at this. And I began to realize the whole tenor of a conversation with a leader changed. So arrogance and pride and self-confidence sometimes can create resistance with people. Whereas humility and curiosity, maybe, let's figure this out together, creates a partnership and a relationship. What I've learned is telling creates resistance, asking creates relationships. So the power of maybe is the power of saying, maybe if we did it differently or we did it together. I mean, you think about it. There was a guy who was working years ago in a laboratory, medical research, trying to figure out a solution to a big medical problem, and he was playing in a petri dish, and he wasn't getting what he wanted. And after a while, he just left the petri dish overnight, and he was like, "Yeah, I'm done." The next day, he came in, and he was asking himself, "Well, maybe if we take that petri dish and what's in there, maybe it actually could do more than we had thought." What was it in the petri dish? It was the discovery of penicillin. Maybe what looked like a failure is actually the seeds of great success. But when you just say, that failed, and you throw it out, imagine how many things have just not come into the universe because people weren't curious in the moment of difficulty.
Yeah, it's a beautiful perspective to have. So let's talk a little bit about the people that you work with. When someone comes to you and looking to grow their company, right? Because that's, you guys inspire growth. What their journey look like from onboarding to when they say, "Okay, I'm ready to graduate," or is it an ongoing journey?
Yeah, most inspiring growth clients are about a 4 to 5 year cycle. They're in trauma, they need growth, they come to us and say, "Can we help?" And then we do what we call a growth audit. We look at their digital reputation, their platform, all the things that most people enter into a business through, social, all those kinds of things. And what we find are the things that are disconnected. kind of like your podcast is Connect and Grow. What we're trying to do is find those places inside of a company that there's a disconnect. For example, we had somebody come to us and said, man, we just aren't closing deals. And I said, well, tell me about your lead flow. And so they told me about the leads that are coming in. And I said, who handles those? Well, our office manager handles those. Okay, so the lead for a sale, average value of the sale is about $40,000. I said, okay, how long does it take her to get back to the customer? 2 or 3 days. I said, the marketing hack that is most important in your situation is speed. Because when she would put that off, somebody is already looking at other places to book a retreat or a conference, 5 or 6 inquiries in other organizations. And when we started coaching them, if you can do it within 10 minutes, text, call, email. You want to know what percentage of your ability to close that deal actually will have? And our research showed 83% of leads that come through, that if you're the first person to talk to them, you will actually be able to close the sale. And so, somebody comes with a specific problem, we analyze it kind of like a doctor, we prescribe a solution, and there's generally 2 solutions. There is you do it or we do it for you. And in some cases, I had one client, great people, but they didn't have the bandwidth, like that particular person had 6 other jobs. I said, let us take the closing part for you. We'll close the deal, get the contract and the deposit, hand it back to you, you service the group. So we have a virtual sales team that does that. So that's just a little example. I think one of the things that I've recognized at this stage in my life, and I'm 64, is that I need to connect with people relationally before I can jump into their world technically. Part of all onboarding is relational. I'll travel out to wherever the client is, spend several days, go out to dinner, get to know them at a relational level, so that when I begin to make recommendations at a technical level or a strategic level, there's a degree of trust. And there's a great book out there that's called The Speed of Trust. If you trust somebody, you can go faster, make decisions quicker, and see results sooner.
Okay. So what you're saying is really you try to diagnose the issue that someone comes to you. It's always a growth issue, but you try to diagnose what the bottleneck or what the challenge is that's impeding their growth, and then try to address it.
Break down the wall. Break down the wall. Just people say to me that I and my team kick over rocks and find gold. They're rocks that have been in the river for their organization for years. And I ask questions and I tip that rock over and I go, well, what about this little piece of gold? Well, we didn't even know it was there. And I think it's just that natural curiosity that I'm constantly looking for ways to help a person grow. That I call it a curiosity quest. I'll just go in and out of the organization and try to find the answers. I saw a t-shirt recently. I really liked it. It said, fall in love with the problem, not the solution. Fall in love with the problem, not the solution. If you have a big problem, your sales are down 23%. That's a problem. I don't want to sell you a solution that is all about me and what I've done in the past and it's this cookie cutter thing. What I want to do is be fully in love with that problem to a point where we actually might recommend or do things we've never done before to test it. Now, granted, most leaders who are in a decline, revenue, sales, whatever, are nervous to invest in new ideas. And that's why we try to keep really strong data to show when you do this in your organization, like get back to somebody quickly. You realize that when someone has a question or a problem or asks about doing business with you, your speed communicates care. If you're slow, it creates doubt. So just the speed at which you respond and engage with somebody who's interested, that shows that you care and that you care about their problem, and let's find a way to get to the solutions. I actually ask my potential clients this question. What's your revenue this year? They may say 5 million. I say, well, what's your dance naked in the street number? What's the number that if we could help you get to, you would literally dance naked in the street? Not, I mean, you don't have to take your clothes off for me, but I mean, and that solidifies the path of where we're going. They say, well, 7.5 million. I said, okay, tell me how much you're spending on sales and marketing now, and I can make a plan based on that growth that in most cases we've helped our clients grow 50% within 18 months.
50% and within 18 months, you're able to pinpoint various things that business aren't doing right, like not getting back to someone in time.
Right.
That's a big one. What other types of issues, common issues, let's say that, you've come across working with clients?
Well, I have a little pamphlet called The Five Growth Systems, and I've analyzed each of the primary ways, especially hospitality industries, but I've worked with 273 different industries, not businesses, industries. And there are common core things. Another one is not measuring, not measuring activities. I like to say you have to measure what matters. And so a lot of organizations will throw out advertising and they don't measure the impressions, the engagement, and the closed sales. So I create dashboards for CEOs that say, hey, look, we're going to spend $20,000 a month on ads through Google Ads. We're going to build a campaign over the next 6 to 8 weeks, and we're going to measure every single piece of our creative and strategy. And sometimes twice in a week, we'll change a strategy or a campaign because it's not working. And so I think old school days where you kind of you go in a room and everybody talks about their ideas on how to promote the business, and at the end of the day they try something, but it's all opinions. One of my team members, his name is Jeff Dickey. He's our Google guru. He says, when there is no data to make the decision, let's use an opinion, preferably mine. I have essentially about 10 marketing hacks. Another one is to look at what people are charging. And most people undercharge for their service or product. That is just a universal thing. They have a pricing problem, not a marketing problem. I have clients who will say, hey, next year we're going to charge the same amount as this year because, things are tough, the inflation is high. I was like, are any of your expenses staying the same? Anything? No. So raise your rates 3 to 5%. And that produces more net revenue than doubling your ad spend. I mean, we helped one client raise their prices on a particular thing by $35 per sale, 0 drop in demand, and $280,000 in new margin. Before you market harder, I like to say, charge what you're worth. I think another thing that we do pretty well is we shift the language where we're helping clients see you don't sell features, or you sell the experience or the benefits. A car, if you're shopping for a car and you care about miles per gallon for the gas, you're going to say the benefit is you get 40 miles of the gallon, you save money. That's a benefit. A feature is it's a red car. And most people don't buy a feature, they buy a benefit or a memory. So another one would be, have you ever had you had somebody inquire about your business? You got back to them, you answered their questions, you send things, and then they ghost you, right? You've seen this?
I've seen it.
And have you ever read the book Never Split the Difference? He was a former FBI
Yeah,
negotiator.
I have. Yeah.
So he has this great strategy that I use with all my sales teams and my client sales teams, and it's that if you have a qualified lead that you can serve and you're checking all the boxes and they ghost you, send one text. Have you given up on Igor? Have you given up on this product? have you given up on doing that thing you talked to me about? And 70 or 75% of the people who get that message is no, 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 no. I've been busy. It's the holidays. I want to move forward. And so it's a quick way to find
So
qualified people.
what is it about that message that gets such a high response, in your opinion?
People, yeah, my opinion is that people don't read much. A short message that has a question, not a statement, engages the brain. And if it's a priority and still matters to you, you're going to, out of courtesy, most of the time say no or yes, I've moved on. It's a, it's just a really simple way to honor somebody's time by using curiosity. Part of good growth comes from curiosity and testing. I like to test things. And in testing things, I'm able to determine does this work or not work.
I'm familiar with testing different ads to see, which ads are better for getting leads, for, converting, maybe which, sales pages are better at converting. But aside from those, are there other things that are testable in a process or in a
Oh my
business,
God.
I'd say?
I mean, most things are testable. Most, if you keep track of the data and aggregate the data and then look at it from a human strategic perspective, you can find the missing pieces. My son, for example, my eldest son, he is a sales guy for a SaaS business, software business. And not only do they record the discovery calls, the sales calls, but then it's transcribed, then it's sent off into an AI component that will identify the top reasons or pain points that person has has talked about. And then the sales manager literally can say, "Hey, why don't we give that person this deal based on that call?" Maybe the salesperson missed it on the call. So there is a component where AI now can help assist in decision making and data development and see those threads. For me, it's a little addictive. Like you got a product or service that people want, and you can test it, whether it's Meta ads, Google ads, sales funnels on your website, and you can see how many people come into the funnel, how many people stop at this level, how many people stop engaging, they don't fill out the form. That kind of data will inform your decision making. What happens with most people, especially my age people, like 50 to 65, they have a set it and forget it mentality. Are you with me? Like, we're going to set this, we leave it alone, we got to put out other fires on the back 40 of the ranch. Well, for growth minded people, they're testing, testing, testing. Whoop, that one worked, let's do it again.
Okay. So always tracking the metrics, always measuring, always trying to improve and doing tests, you know, whether the obvious things like ads and number of visits to the website, clicks and so on, down the funnel, but also, establishing metrics within sales and keeping track of those things. So, a big part of our audience are coaches. And so, a lot of coaches do their own sales and many of them do their own marketing. So, they may not be as marketing savvy as you. Are there some resources that you could recommend to someone to help them with their marketing, with their sales?
Igor, the amount of ads I'm served on social media targeting, hey, we can make your growth as a coach 10x this and 10x that and try our formula. Like, there are just an onslaught of marketing companies that are trying to help coaches. What I would recommend personally, and this is just an old school thinking, is go to a person that's succeeded and say, hey, I'd like to be like you. I'd like to figure out, but I know it took you 20 years. Would you help me figure it out? Just humbly go to somebody that's succeeding. And if they say, sure, can I meet? Can I meet with you? And make it reciprocal. I mean, there has to be something you're going to give as a appreciation or gratitude. You may not help them grow their business, but you might find out that their wife has a terrible set of knives in their kitchen, and you go out and buy them a $1,500 Cutco knives system, and put a plaque on it and says, "Thanks for helping me grow." Send it to them. This is what I've done. I send it to my clients and say, "Hey, I'm just grateful for you." And I don't do it at Christmas. I do it on March or August, or I don't tie it to a presumptive type of thing. So in Inspiring Growth, we have the 7 stages of growth. So the first stage is this. You got to set a goal. If you're a coach, you have a goal. What is it? Revenue goal, how many people you're serving, organizations, leaders, whatever it is. Just set a goal. I learned this when I was trying to lose weight. And I hired a coach, a weight loss coach, and he said, you got to measure what matters. So we're going to measure your exercise, measure your weight. Every day you're going to take a picture of your feet on a scale, and you're going to post that into an accountability group and a Facebook group. I'm like, my big fat stomach is going to show up on Facebook? He goes, no, it's a private group. You just invite the people that you want to help you and cheer you on. And so just that, I set a goal, 23 pounds. And I started posting. I set a goal. I started posting. I had a coach. And that, I lost 23 pounds. Stage 2 of Inspiring Growth is to clarify your story. If you're a coach, and you have to be able to say who you are, and what you do very quickly, and you have to do it in a very compelling reason, or voice, or tagline. So clarifying your story sounds something like this: "Hey, what do you do?" "Oh, I have a sales and marketing agency and a coaching business for leaders." Okay, well, that's all about me, right? Instead, what do you do? "Well, I help inspire growth with great leaders and their brands." "Oh, tell me more." And then I get inside their story, and I ask questions about their story. The third stage is to ask questions over and over and over again, asking questions, clarifying questions, revealing questions. I think you're hearing a theme with me. Curiosity is what guides me. It's the quest that takes you to adventures and growth and connections simply by asking questions. I remember sort of how you walk into a room. I was invited to be interviewed to be the chaplain of the Washington Redskins, now the Washington Commanders. The coach brought me down to the place where they practice, and I said to him, "Coach, what's the one thing you want to teach these young kids that are on your team?" And he goes, "It's very simple, Mark. I want this. When they walk into a room, these are young 20-something kids making millions of dollars. When they walk into a room, I want them to say, instead of 'here I am,' I want them to say, 'there you are.'" And that starts with questions. Like before we started recording it, you asked me if I had any questions. I said, "Well, yeah, what's your favorite kind of food?" And you said sushi. Well, that actually activates your brain into joy. And joy creates connection. And connection creates, that joy and connection creates trust. Now, there are manipulators that will take that to the places of narcissistic abuse. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about genuinely connecting with a human. The fourth stage is to make a plan. You got to make some sort of plan. 1 year, 3 months, 2 months, whatever it is, just make a plan. And stage 5 is to test things like crazy. Over and over, test. And then stage 6 is make sure you measure your progress and keep track of what works and what doesn't. And stage 7, I call it celebrating success and having an autopsy without judgment. In other words, look back at the activity that got to this result. Let's see what worked, what didn't, what not. So that's a framework that I think your coaches could at least embrace. When it comes to things to read and people to follow and programs to engage in, when it comes to marketing, sales, and growth. I like Gary V. Gary Vandercheck. He's got a media company, a very flamboyant kind of guy. I really like Mel Robbins. She has a book called Let Them, and she has been very influential in my journey. Jay Abraham was early on in my journey as a marketing professional, taught me how to reverse risk on all offers and take a piece of the sale, not just a fee. He's been very helpful in that space. I also think that Donald Miller with Story Brand has a great way of building a 7-step program that's movies use, where you have a reluctant hero who meets a guide who calls him out into action. He takes that advice and he either ends up as a hero or it's called tragedy. But those are just a few folks that I recommend and that have influenced me.
Great. Well, I appreciate that. Appreciate you for sharing. So, what are some of your favorite clients that you worked with, and like the best outcomes that you've had?
Whew. Well, I told you early on in the conversation that we help clients grow 50% in 18 months. The reason I know that statistic is because our team went back and looked at our 13-year history and went, do you realize that pretty much after somebody hires us, it's up and to the right, except for COVID, it's up and to the right, and it usually is about at the 18-month mark, we've increased it by 50%. So I have one client in New England. Their sales were about 500,000, 480 when we started with them 4 years ago. We went in, did a digital audit. We recognized they needed a virtual salesperson, and we started doing Google ads. They've gone from 500,000 to this month 1.5 million. I have a client in Phoenix, Arizona. They were struggling at about $900,000 a year. Did the same thing. Went in, looked at their website. We redesigned their website, rebranded them, did Google ads, put a virtual salesperson in there for them. They've gone from $900,000, Igor. I just reviewed this with the CEO this morning. They're at $2 million. I had another client in Southern California. He was just hovering at about 600,000, 600 to 700,000. Couldn't break the million mark, and we just recently got to 1.2 million with them. So, just a couple of. Now, I have a motto, and that is have fun but get her done. So every single one of those clients I just talked to you about, I also have a personal relationship with the leader, and I like to take them places on trips. Because I want to get to know them relationally. And so part of what I do with one client is every time I'm in Southern California, we go to Mexican food and watch a Jack Reacher movie or a Tom Cruise movie or something. I have another one who's a Steelers fan, and so we've gone to 2 Steelers games together. I have another one who loves the cruise. We've cruised. Why not have fun with people that you're working with in a human way? Because if you have fun, you're going to get stuff done.
If you have fun, you're gonna get stuff done. Okay, I like that. I might steal that from you. So, well,
You
I
can take it and make it your.
great, appreciate that. Well, thank you for coming on. If someone's interested in getting in touch with you, Mark, what's the best place to reach out to find you?
So, social on Instagram, it's Mark P. Fisher. If you want to head over to our website, it's inspiringgrowth.biz. That's B-I-Z, inspiringgrowth.biz. And then if you just want to reach out and send me an email, it's mark@inspiringgrowth.biz. But I'll do this, Igor. If any of your friends that are watching this, if they go to my Inspiring Growth website, at the very bottom, it says connect with Mark. I think that's what it says, or make an appointment with Mark. It's buried. It's not very public. If they make an appointment with me for a Zoom call for 30 or 45 minutes and they mention you, then I'm going to give them something special. I don't know what I'm going to give them. I'm going to give them something, maybe the free growth audit. Yeah. If they mention you, I'll tell them I'll give them the free growth audit. So those are the couple of ways to get a hold of us.
Okay. Awesome. Thanks for letting us know. And I'll be sure to post all of the links that you just mentioned in the bottom of this video. So again, Mark, thanks for coming on the show. Of
You're welcome. Let me ask you a question, if I may.
course.
What is it that you're doing right now that is giving you energy?
So
Not taking
having
energy.
um giving energy, so having conversations like this one is giving me energy. I'd say thinking about strategy and my business also gives me energy. I'd say off the top of my head, those two things.
Well, let me just say this, Igor. May you discover a path full of energy through connections and strategy. Grace and peace to you. Thanks for having me on the show.
Thank you, Mark.
Peace.